This video presents a basic explanation of the gradient tool in Adobe Photoshop. Further videos explore this tool in more depth and demonstrate different applications. My name is CJ Robb and I'm your facilitator. Let's get started with a beginner's look at the gradient tool. When working with the gradient tool, there seems to be a nearly infinite number of permutations of how a gradient pattern can be created. In some ways, the gradient tool is completely predictable, which I will demonstrate. In other ways, the gradient tool can yield unique results depending on the combination of settings you select. Let's get started with a basic understanding of how to use the gradient tool. This is the gradient tool icon. It is also G on the keyboard. The gradient tool shares a spot with two additional tools and is located 7 icons from the top on the left-hand column. The gradient tool works by mixing two colors together, the foreground fill color and the background fill color located on the main toolbar. Keep the settings on the Options panel bar simple at first. Choose Classic Gradient and a normal blending mode at 100% opacity. The gradient pattern is linear. Select an area as I have here. Pick on one side of the selected area and drag the mouse to the other side, and then release the mouse button. The gradient pattern starts with the foreground fill color and ends the pattern with the background fill color. Somewhere in between the first point you pick and the point where you let go of the mouse, the two gradient colors become mixed. The gradient tool works from any side and any angle, not just left to right. Remember, where you start by picking with the gradient tool is where the foreground color starts the gradient pattern. You can see that no matter where I pick and drag out the pattern, the gradient begins with the foreground fill color, which is currently set to red. The gradient pattern ends with the background fill color, which is currently green. Somewhere in the middle of the gradient pattern, Photoshop mixes both the foreground and the background fill colors. Things begin to get interesting when you begin changing the settings on the Options panel for the gradient tool. The next example shows a side-by-side comparison of different techniques. In example 2, there are 4 squares. The upper left-hand square will have a teal-colored foreground and a white background fill. Classic Gradient is selected with a mix of foreground and background fill colors in a normal blending mode at 100% opacity. Compare this square to the one in the upper right-hand corner. They both seem to be very similar, but the difference will become apparent in a moment. If we add a background color to the layer below the squares, look at what peeks through in the top right square. This is where the transparency setting really shows itself. Notice how different the top 2 squares are from each other. Moving on to the next example in the lower left-hand square, again, on the Options panel, you can see that a classic gradient, foreground fill to transparency, is set with a linear pattern. This time, however, the mode is set to multiply and opacity is set to 50%. Each time I pick and drag out a gradient effect, watch how the layers build upon itself. In the last square on the bottom right, we keep all the same settings, but we'll show you different gradient patterns. So instead of the linear pattern, we'll go through each of the settings one by one so that you can see the distinction. This has been a quick video demonstrating the basics of the Photoshop Gradient tool. If this video was helpful to you, there are more from this series to watch located at CJ Robb Classes on the YouTube channel at Charisse Janelle. Thank you for watching.